Hey, what's up guys? So a few days ago, a buddy of mine and a guy I've done some work for in the past reached out to me, said he had an idea that he wanted to have a couple little man catch-all tables built for himself that holds his iPhone, his watch, his wallet, things like that. And he sent me a photo of this guy. And then, so I said, yeah, all right, I think I can do that. So I sat down, did some drawings of my own, and I think what I'm going to do is, he wanted one built out of walnut, which I happen to have some sitting around from a previous project. But then I'm thinking this might be a good project to list on Etsy and some of the other retailers, offer it for sale for everybody. So I'm going to do one out of barnwood as well. So I think this video might be a good time to show some of the differences of working with barnwood and working with real or new wood like walnut. So I hope you guys enjoy. Right off the bat, a big difference between working with barnwood and new wood is that with barnwood you gotta clean off all the dirt and the grime. New wood you don't have to. So with barnwood you have to decide early on which side's gonna be a good side and which side you can plane down. With the new wood you can plane down both sides. And once it's cut down to its final width, it's time to plane it down to its final thickness. Again, barnwood just in one side, with new wood you're doing both. So now I have the bases cut to their final dimension, and I decided to cut these pockets with my CNC machine. So I use a program called Vrcarve Pro to do all the drafting, to lay out the pockets and the shapes and the sizes. And then I can export this into another program that'll actually tell the machine where to cut, how to cut, and actually talk to the machine, essentially. So now I have it drawn, and I have it saved as an SVG file, and I open it in this program called Easel. It's a very user-friendly web-based program that you can set up. You can put your drawing in, set up the depths, the type of cuts, the bits, the whole 9 yards, and it'll carve from this program. So since this is the first time I've cut this file, I actually sat and watched it cut, make sure everything was going to go smooth on this first piece on the walnut. So that way, next piece on the barnwood, I know it's all set, it's ready to go. I can go do other things while it's cutting. At this point, the barnwood base is on the CNC machine getting cut, and I'm just finishing up or building the phone stand portion of the catch-all table, as well as the watch stand. The phone stand, I actually cut it at about a 15-degree angle, so it's not just sitting at 90 degrees. And then I drill a hole so you can run your charger through. And then I also had to go back and put in a dado in the phone stand, and then I put I built a little shelf essentially that'll fit in that dado, so that the phone can have something to sit on. Just like any other project I do, each piece gets sanded down with a 80 grit, a 120 or a 100 grit, and then finished up with a 220 grit. Okay, so one of the big differences that I use when working with reclaimed compared to new wood is that with new wood you typically do what's called raising the grain after you've already sanded it with a 60 grit, the 150 grit, and the 220. So what I do is I actually leave my the reclaimed wood. I don't actually pop the grain. I kind of like the fact that it'll be a little bit rougher. I mean, it's smooth enough with that first pass that you're not going to get any splinters or anything like that. If there are, then it just needs more sanding. And with the new wood, it's actually pretty smooth. But again, popping the grain and then sanding it back down with 220 will actually make it even smoother. It makes it even smoother because when the water gets in there, all the little minuscule little hairs and fibers of the wood actually raise up. They start looking for that moisture, and so it's pretty smooth right now. Once I get it wet, I'll let it dry. It'll actually be a little bit rough again. So then I'll hit it up with another 220 and it'll be buttery smooth, baby. When you are raising the grain, you just want to get it damp. You don't want to get it too wet, just a little bit, so that the fibers will start seeking out that moisture. Now I've got the walnut sanded back down to 220, so it's buttery smooth, and I have the shelves glued back into that Dado, and I've started working on the watch holding piece of the Catchall. Use the watch holding piece of the Catchall as a way to show off some joinery, to make it a little more custom. So I used a bridle on the top and a lap joint on the lower one, and then I'm going to tie them together with a dowel. I used the table saw to remove the bulk of the material, and then I came back with a chisel to sneak up on the final inch and get it nice and snug. So now that I got the dry fit all nice and tight, time to take them apart, put some glue in the joints, clamp them together, and let them sit for a little bit. While those are drying, I needed to make the mortise in the faces. So I started just with a 5/8 inch drill bit and then squared it up with my chisels. Being a prototype and the first time I've ever built this, I realized at this point that I should have cut the tenons before on the table saw before I glued up the sides. So I had to go back and basically just chisel off the tenons and get the size just right. I also, at this point, since I had them out of the clamps, I went ahead and drilled my holes and put my dowels through the each of those two, the bridle joints and the lap joints. Hello. As a craftsman, sometimes I struggle with how to make a certain joint, or what kind of joint I should use in a given situation. Moments like that, that's when I reach for my refreshment of choice. Craftsman Juice. As soon as that sweet nectar hit my lips, I know exactly which joint to use and how to make it. Now, if they tested for performance-enhancing drugs on woodworkers, this would most certainly be banned. But lucky for us, they don't. Now, a little something about Craftsman Juice. It's derived from an old recipe found in a monastery in the Bavarian mountains that belonged to craftsman monks. Now, nobody really knows exactly what it's made out of. Nobody really knows the ingredients. but it's believed that it's actually made with the sawdust of Noah's Ark. So the next time you find yourself in a workshop stumped and you can't quite figure out how to make a joint or which one to use, just take a sip of this sweet nectar and all your problems are gone in the wood shop. So if you'll excuse me, I have a lap jointed dovetail with a blind wedge tenon to cut. So again, being prototype, there's a fair amount of design on the fly that goes on with it. So I decided that the phone holder needed a little more support on the backside, and I'm just cutting those angles at this point. Again, just like I did with the phone holder earlier, sand everything down to 220, hot grain, and make it buttery smooth. So it's just a matter of gluing those supports on the backs, letting them set up, and then I can attach the phone holder to the base. Now, obviously, just making sure everything's square and in the right place before I clamp it to let it set overnight. So now I have a little bit of fine tuning left to do on the mortise and tenons of the watch holding element. And once I do, I get it in there, I glue it in, but then I countersink and drill a screw in just for a little added support. Now it's in the finishing booth getting a coat of finish oil. Another difference between barnwood and the new wood is that the barnwood is so dry, it's so old that it just soaks this oil in, and you don't really have to wipe much off at all, if any. Where the walnut, it's after it sits for about 10-15 minutes, you go to wipe off the oil, there's still a fair amount that hasn't soaked in yet. So that's it. That's the whole process of how you build these little catch-all tables. I hope you guys enjoyed, and hope you guys learned a little something about the differences between working with barnwood and walnut, the new wood. So look for these, be on the lookout on my Etsy site and some of my other pages that retailers that I sell through. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, comment below, press the like button, subscribe, share with all your friends and family, and we'll look forward to hearing from you again. See you guys.